Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services here this afternoon, we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Shalom and good afternoon. I am Rabbi Gary Gans. I'm the Rabbi Emeritus at Congregation Beth Tikva in Marlton. I'm sad but honored to be with you this afternoon. We acknowledge the death of Sandra. We also acknowledge her husband Harris, who preceded her in death in 1982, a long time back. And also acknowledge his burial at sea, thanks to his efforts in the U.S. Navy. We also acknowledge David, Jay, and Judy, and their spouses Nikki, Bernadette, and Jay. So I've quickly learned there are two Jays as a popular name in your family. We also acknowledge Joan. She was here in the front. Oh, there she is. Okay. Her sister. And her other sister, Linda, who is streaming presumably from California. We acknowledge their longer-term life with Sandy and the childhood memories that they hold dear as well. I offer on her behalf the first prayer. Ma'ayan hechayim, wellspring of life. We share our sorrow to commemorate the life of Sandra, recall the blessing of her life, and thank God for all that was good and true in her life, and for the precious memories which shall endure. Eternal God, her family and friends, seek light to dispel the dark gloom that threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn, for they are in distress. Bless them with your compassion. Ease their burden of sorrow. Send them light and peace, for it is written, fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you and sustain you. And let us say, Amen. The traditional prayer, the Psalm 23, I'll read an excerpt in Hebrew and then an English interpretation. Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, benodesha yarbitseni, almei menuchot yanachaleni. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God has me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the still waters. God guides me on paths of righteousness and revives my soul for the sake of God's glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set the table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. When I came into the chapel and I saw you're meeting each other in the back, there was a sense of joy, even mixed with a sense of sadness and gravitas. I appreciated that combination of emotions, an awareness that you have been together through happy events and sad ones as well. This dichotomy of emotion is so well described in the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Before we began the more public part of the ceremony, you may have noticed, or will certainly notice afterwards, that I tore the ribbons worn by David, Judy, and Joan. Children mourning a parent wear them on the left-hand side, as is our case today. And Joan, as in every other relationship, wears it on her right-hand side. That's not helter-skelter, that's done by design. You also will see that the ribbons are not cut all the way, but partially. There's a cutting feeling you feel emotionally at her death, yet there is the content, the love, the life, the linkages that lasts in the ribbon material that is still intact. All this is done with thousands of years of tradition in mind as well. When I ended the reading of this text, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And indeed, the heart of our ceremony today is indeed members of the family, extended as it is, who will be sharing, speaking, and identifying what their relationship with Sandra has been. So I call first on David.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. The sign of age. Maturity. Thank you. So I have really happy memories of my mother when we were growing up in Cherry Hill. I remember my mom was always the mom for everybody in the neighborhood, and really appeared to be that our house was the hangout, that everyone sort of gathered around there, and everyone was, of course, felt welcomed. My mom loved making the house comfortable and welcoming. She seemed to love being a mom and being a wife. My high school friends were reminiscing about her the other day, and they really saw it that way, too. Case in point, got a letter from Marge Margulies. She's out in California now, and she wrote about how, back when we were in high school, maybe a little younger, I don't know exactly when, she would put on the shopping list Lucky Charms. And in fact, she did confirm that in her correspondence the other day. And sure enough, like clockwork, the next time my mother went to the grocery store, Lucky Charms would magically appear in the cupboards. When a little later, turning 17, getting my driver's license, one evening, I was driving down the street to our house. My mother was in the passenger seat. Maybe it was dark, but it wasn't, it's still early in the evening. And lo and behold, I got pulled over by the police. And she comes out of the car. I exit the car, of course. She gets out of it on her side with her finger in the air. "I'm his mother," she says. And really, that is something that she really carried throughout her life. And of course, me, being the 17-year-old, I'm sure I must have rolled my eyes at the time. When I went to college, really it was a technical school, I was housed with some other students in a motel in Woodbridge, New Jersey, like overflow housing. And I think, she could tell that I was disappointed. Not quite certain what she did, but she pulled some strings, made a few calls, and it got transferred to Kane College dormitories in nearby Union, New Jersey. The one thing I remember from that whole experience was it was nice to be in a real dorm, but also making those calls on the payphone, waiting in line. Now again, young people, I'm sure you don't remember this, but that was sort of the state of affairs in communicating home with parents. Of course, when my father died, that was probably the most traumatic event for all of us at our fairly young lives. It was extraordinarily sad with my father being cut down in his prime. And this is not what any of us expected, and my mother was not prepared to be alone. But she was strong, she was resilient, and she forged ahead, with Jay and Judy still at home and me just a few years out. It's all a fog to me now, really, but I recall at the time that she really was a remarkable woman and one that I was proud to call mom. She continued with her accomplishments as a now widow, enrolling at Rutgers University, getting a Bachelor of Arts in psychology, and then continuing her education with a Master in social work, again, both at Rutgers and Camden. She then got a job as a social worker for the state of New Jersey, and she remained there until she retired in 2014. Quite an accomplishment. I think a little bit earlier than that, though, of course, I met Nikki, and Harris and Katie came onto the scene, and we visited her fairly frequently we were living in Philadelphia at the time. We would come over to Cherry Hill mostly on Friday nights, and I recall when I was a kid, my parents would go to my grandmother's home, my mother's parents, every Friday. And this is sort of like we were sort of replicating that kind of process, visiting her on Friday evenings after work. We then, of course, moved to Maryland a little later, and she came down with some regularity. We came up. It was really nice, frequent visits, seeing her. And she was really involved and really loved being a grandmother almost as much as being a mother. And she came down for all the events for Harris and Katie. And there were so many different events: soccer games, autism walks, the variety shows, step shows, the ballet. It was just really endless, and she was involved in their lives throughout. She was also the center of our holiday celebrations. She would always host, or really want to, until the very end. And after she moved into a smaller house, she really was saddened, frustrated that she could no longer be the host. And we really tried to make it work the best we could in trying to bring food in or going out. But again, I think she really liked being this, the center and having everyone at her home. Family to her was everything, and she arranged 3 extraordinarily memorable trips for Jay, Judy, me, our extended families, and that was to Disney World when the kids were really small, and then there were 2 cruises almost like every 5 years or thereabout. So again, extraordinarily memorable. We were really pleased about those, really pleased and really thankful for those memories. My mother taught me the meaning of showing up for people in life, and Nikki loves to tease me that I'm the only 66-year-old who probably goes back to visit his mother every year on his birthday. So every year we always go up there in February, and of course I will miss those occurrences. And of course, you know, my birthday and Katie's birthday one day apart, so it was really was a double. We would go up, but again, I'm going to miss those journeys to her place on our birthdays. As most of you know, the last few years have been kind of hard for my mother. Jay, Judy, and I did what we could to take care of her the best we could. And even as her health declined and her memory lapsed, she was always laser focused on us and the people who were in her life. She was protective of me as a child. Remember I'm his mother. And I hope I was as protective of her in her later years, because I can proudly say that I'm her son. Thank you very much. Now, before I go, our son Harris, who would like to say a few things, but if he came up, he might speak in Spanish or talk about Rick Dees or maybe not speak at all. So on behalf of Harris, we did a very short recording, which I will attempt to play.
I like Grandma because she is nice. She talks me. I like going to her house for birthdays and Hanukkah. grandmom cooks and gives me great presents. I'm gonna miss Grandma.
Thank you, Harris. And thank you all.
So, David, the burning question is, did you get a ticket or did she prevent that from happening?
Lost to the fog of memory.
That sounds like you got a ticket, but don't want to admit it. I now call on Jay to come forward.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm going to skip around a little bit because David stole a lot of my thunder. We have the same familial experiences, so. But as I said, where do I begin? Perhaps I'll start at the beginning, which is my birthday. My birthday was December 17th, and I was told as many times that I was my mother's birthday present. Mom's birthday was the next day, December 18th, and I'm sure it was a great present for her to get me out. Ever since then, and for the last 64 years, we've always had a shared birthday together. Mom was always adamant that we, as a family, celebrate our holidays and special occasions together. This obviously included our birthdays, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, and of course, Thanksgiving. Our family made the most of birthdays as we have a number of coincident birthdays. As David mentioned, David and Katie are the 19th and the 20th. Mom and I are the 17th and the 18th. And my wife Bernadette and Harris are the July 7th and 8th. So we always got a chance to do our birthdays. And of course, Nikki and Judy are only a month apart, so we'll squeeze them in. So as a family, we've always gotten together for the most part, if not for all of those occasions. And they will be one of my mother's wishes for her children to continue to stay in touch, get together more often, and enjoy our families together. So just reverting back to my childhood for a moment and some of my memories that stick out. Basically, I guess when we're all in first grade or kindergarten, I remember my mom had this green coat with a hood with a black tassel on the back. And I remember when she dropped me off at school, I was just hanging on to that tassel. She left me there, it's just, but it's still in my mind. So Mom was a stay-at-home mom, but later in our lives, she took jobs outside the home. Particularly, I remember her bookkeeping days at Jack Lang Clothier at the Echelon Mall. She would take us to work with her. We would just hang out at the mall. And there was a Dunkin' Donuts right next door, so I had plenty of donuts in that mall. Later in the years, Mom, I think it was my junior or early high school, Mom and a friend opened up a candy store in Philadelphia. That was between Chestnut and Walnut, 12th and 13th, in that range. And that was the first time we had Haagen-Dazs ice cream. They were just coming into the geographic area at that time. And that tied into with our family business. My father's business was circle vending, and candy was our business. We had bubblegum, Pez candy, Jawbreakers, M&Ms, and the like. So it was quite fitting for what we were doing. During my developmental years, and shall I say my experimental years of junior high school and high school, Mom was a very tolerant, understanding mother. I, as the middle child, may have been more of a handful than my siblings, but, it was the 70s, and we were going full bore with everything that was happening back then, so I won't go into details, but I will say we were caught numerous times, not being in school, but hanging out in my room, which was sort of like Grand Central Station for of all my friends. But as I grew and started to mature, I had the full support of my parents. Unfortunately, in my second year at Maryland, my father passed away of leukemia at 51, and just like that, Mom was a widow. I thought about quitting school and taking over circle vending, but Mom wouldn't have none of it. The business was sold, and I continued my time at Maryland. And through those years were joyous and turbulent. My mother always supported me through and out after my graduation. Before college, we lived in Brandy Woods, and after my father passed away, Mom moved to Society Hill in Cherry Hill. After college, I came back to live with Mom, and she took the time and the expense to renovate the basement, where I basically had my own apartment. And that was what Mom was all about, making sure her children are okay. Before our father passed, our parents had a good group of friends, but eventually friends drifted away. It was around this time that Mom decided to do more with her life. And as David mentioned, she applied to and went to Rutgers University, first as a part-time student, but eventually received her bachelor's and then her master's, and went on to work for the state of New Jersey for 25 years until her retirement. I lived with Mom for many years after she, as we did in Brandy Woods, allowed me the freedom of the condo as my own. It was a great relationship for the both of us while I was trying to find myself and develop a career for myself. We had many conversations over the years about life, love, and happiness. I eventually achieved love and happiness when I met my wife, Bernadette. Bernadette mentioned that when she first met Mom, coming up the steps at Society Hill, she immediately felt warmth and inviting nature of Mom and knew this would be a wonderful and loving relationship. When Bernadette and I got engaged, Mom and Bernadette were having one of their many wonderful conversations at the kitchen table. And Mom asked Bernadette what she would like to call her, and without hesitation, Bernadette said Mom. And that's because she was already like a mom to Bernadette. Also, Bernadette also enjoyed, because Mom always would hand down all of her clothing, and Bernadette still wears everything that Mom gave her, clothing and jewelry, and Mom really loved seeing Bernadette dressed like that. So we were married in 1995, and both ordinary people on a budget. And Mom, generosity, offered to help with the wedding like she did throughout our marriage, always asking, do you need money? Anything that we can do? When Ben was born and eventually became a bar mitzvah, again, Mom was there to help with that celebration. Mom was always there for us and Benjamin as he was growing up, doing all the things that grandparents do, coming to the school plays, Little League, basketball, lacrosse. Eventually, those activities developed into a more commitments, assisting Ben in getting a car or two. This type of generosity came about time and time again, always asking, is everything all right? Do you need anything? Do you need money? Making sure her children are taken care of was always a driving force throughout her life and our families, and we've applied that same principle today. Over the years, from Society Hill to the West End to Brookdale, we have visited Mom so often and have had many conversations about everything. This was a recurring theme over the years, especially as we all grow older and our geographic locations spread further and further apart. Keeping the family together was a driving point for her. Over the years, Mom wanted to do more family trips, and as David mentioned, she had the resources, so we had those wonderful trips to Disney and the family cruises. But, in the later years when illnesses and other ailments starting to interrupt her life, we and the entire family started to make preparations for Mom that really affected her daily routine. And the hardest part of an aging parent is making the move from their home to a more accessible one, like the West End, which was independent living without stairs. That's the whole point there. And the last time was the hardest because we had to move her again to Brookdale when her mobility slowed and, everything else. But we were always there no matter the distance. And thank goodness for the technology like FaceTime and Ring, where it enables us to be with Mom no matter what the distance. At the end of her life, Bernadette and I were both with Mom when she passed. David and Judy were also there, but virtually. Mom knew we were all there. She could hear us all. We were holding her hand, caressing her forehead, and speaking gently so that we were there. We had our tears there and then, but it made us happy knowing that we were all there. She felt us physically, and she was not alone. She knew we were there and was comforted by that. In the end, in retrospect of our lives, to us, her children and grandchildren, Mom was the best mother and grandmother that we could have ever hoped to have. She would often say how lucky she was to have Bernadette and Nikki as daughters-in-laws, and in turn, how Nikki and Bernadette are lucky to have Mom as a mother-in-law. So in closing, remembering both of our parents, my father had a wonderful life but died way too young at 51. My mother also had a wonderful life and lived to the age of 89. I only wish my parents could have averaged out their lifetimes and had more time together, and that would have been wonderful. So we love you, Mom and Dad. Yes. Okay. All right. That got mine's done. And now my cousin Marla Burke, who's here with us today, and David Burke, Kenneth Burke, David and Leonard and Kenneth, the family. So this is from Marla. So in many ways, Sandra, you were like a second mother to me, having been close to as cousins my entire life. I recall so many wonderful times that our family spent together, barbecues, Thanksgivings, Passover, and many, many other occasions where families gathered to celebrate. My earliest memories go back to the days that you lived in Philly. First, there were the family picnics, which I'm sure many of you here recall. What a great time. Sandra and Harris would pull up with a van full of gumballs and charms, and we would each take one cup full. And believe it or not, I still have my charms, which are so much better than any you could get today. Another recollection from the past, from way into the past, was our Passover dinner hosted by Sandra and Harris. There were so many people there. Aunt Jerry, Uncle Manny, which were my grandparents, Marla's grandfather, Sadie, and grandfather, Isidore, my parents, Bernie and Bee, and all of us kids. Again, as well as others who are here in this room, we were here in your row house, seated at a very, very long table in the living room. I believe that all of us kids thought that Passover got its name because we passed around so many plates with symbolic foods. Each time we passed the plate, we joyfully yelled, Passover, over and over again. After my mother passed in 2003, Sandra, you called me monthly, if not more, just to see how I was doing and to check on how Dad was holding up. We would speak for hours, and of course, there were numerous times that I called you while between jobs, trying to navigate the New Jersey unemployment system. You were so helpful and motivational. Somewhere during the years, we started to have the family Thanksgivings. I don't recall exactly when that started. However, it seems to have continued on for 50 years or so. The crowd has changed a bit as time went on, but there was always Sandra and my dad until 2022. No one will ever forget the fried turkey skin toss, 2003. That was when we tossed meat across the table. Just the skin. Since 2003, Sandra was at Thanksgiving, was the Thanksgiving matriarch. It was tough this past Thanksgiving not having my dad, as it was hosted in his house, and he was the Thanksgiving patriarch. And now there will be 2 empty seats at the head table. I think I will always set a place for them anyway. My wish and hope is that we, the next generation, will continue the Thanksgiving tradition. The scary part of that is me being the matriarch when I don't even cook. I will miss you dearly. Love, Marla. Thank you.
It was poignant, Jay, that you began your presentation speaking about birthday celebrations. And I invested time with each of the siblings over the past couple days. I don't remember which one of you told me how hard her next birthday is going to be. It'll be the first one without her. So I wish you strength for all that. And I'm honored to call on Judy.
recording. Okay. After me, I think, is Nikki.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Nervous. I don't like speaking in front of people, so I will do my best. So, hi and welcome. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today to help celebrate my mother's incredible life. I wasn't quite sure how to honor her today, so at the suggestion of my wonderful husband, I wrote her a letter, short and full of love. Dear Mom, my heart is breaking each and every day that you are not here. Thought I'd get a little further. A minute, an hour doesn't go by without me thinking of you. I know this is temporary. Our family has been down this road before. You were the first person I loved, trusted, and relied upon. You are and always will be my hero. You were my best friend. Do it. No, I'm going to do it. Thanks. I've lost my place. Okay, you were my best friend, shopping buddy, my excuse for not doing something, and so much more. So many wonderful memories. You and I in Disney World, going to New York to see Barbara Walters on The View, Barbra Streisand in concert, and always forgetting where we parked our car at Strawbridge's. Your love and support made me the woman I am today. You were my everything. Give everyone a big hug from me. I love you. P.S. I'll be okay. Thank you.
Judy, it's reassuring, not just to your mother, but to everyone here, that you're sad, but you'll be okay. Okay. And now call on Nikki. Nikki, this is Nikki, sorry. And you're going to read for Linda?
Something from me and something from Linda.
Okay. It's all yours.
First.
Do your stuff, your personal stuff.
First. Okay. Wow, it's a little intimidating being up here. Can you hear me? Okay. So, like Judy, I ended up writing a letter because sometimes it's hard to talk about somebody you care about so deeply in the third person. And I need to say first, I'm happy to think that Mom is somewhere in a better place and not suffering anymore. And it doesn't change how much I miss her already. So my experience maybe was a little different than Bernadette's. I found marrying into a family different than being born into a family. Mom and I didn't bless each other with unconditional love from the get-go. I started dating David pretty shortly after Harris died. And in retrospect, I realized what a really difficult time to move into a family. And I didn't understand it then. Mom was picking up the pieces of her life. And I was 20-something. I was still figuring out who the heck I was. I was a little obnoxious, a little opinionated, a little headstrong, and probably not who she wanted walking in the door to marry her son. So it wasn't, she was gracious and wonderful and warm, always. But we had to work on it. And working out wedding details was very stressful. And much to Mom's dissatisfaction, David and I did most of our wedding the way we wanted to, not the way she wanted us to. And I think, in retrospect, I really started to love her shortly after that wedding, when she called us and said, "You were right. That wedding was really perfect, the most beautiful wedding I've ever been to, because it reflected you two to a T." And I thought, this is a woman I can really care about. She was gracious and full of grace. I know how hard that call was for her to make, and I have loved her for it ever since. So shortly after David and I got married, Mom asked me to call her Mom. And I have a wonderful mom. She's here. She drove down from Connecticut to be here. And the idea that I would have two moms just didn't quite sit right with me. And so I kind of said, yeah, I think I'll just stick with Sandy. And I called her Sandy for many years. And we took one step at a time to get to know each other. And we found our way, as David and Jay have talked about. Birthdays, holidays, celebrating family was utmost of importance to Sandy, Mom, and to the family. We saw her regularly. I won't rattle off all the events because you've already heard them. She came down to Maryland for all of the kids' activities you've already heard. And on one of those wonderful family trips that she took us on, I asked her if I was too late to start calling her Mom, because I realized she was really much like a second mom to me. And it took me by surprise, and she never replaced my mom, of course. What a silly concept. But how lucky I am in life to have had two really wonderful, strong women to call Mom and to be able to love them and have them love me unconditionally. And I don't take that for granted. I'm so, so grateful for it. And I've been really proud to call Sandy Mom ever since then. So the last few years have been hard. You've also heard that. And while Sandy's body failed her, she couldn't remember how to use the phone or the remote control. She would call with lots of questions and confusion, but she never stopped asking, how are you? How's Katie? How's Harris? How's your health? What are you doing for fun? How can I help you? The essence of her was always with us to the end, and I'm very grateful for that. So Mom, rest in peace. You've earned it, and we'll do our best to carry on, to love each other in the way that you've taught us and shown us how. So that was from me. And now I really have the honor to read for Linda, Mom's younger sister to Joan. And Linda also wrote a letter, and I hope it do it justice. She says, Dear Sandy, as the baby of our family, you were already a teenager when I came along. I remember you being there, babysitting for me at times. And when you and Harris got married, I was 8, and by the time I was 10, I had a baby nephew to play with and watch, and then 2 more kids. I spent much of my teenage years in your home babysitting. Your house was like a second home to me, where I could hang out, a place where I could just be. As I grew older, experiencing other ideas, finding new thoughts about the world and my place in it, I would always return to my second home and my big sister. There, I would tell you the details of my thoughts and travels, and no matter how misguided or foreign they were to you, you would always be interested and curious, and I so appreciated that. You have always been a safe haven for me. When I was visiting a month ago, you had wondered what you contributed to life. I reminded you that raising 3 sane, kind, self-sufficient people is an accomplishment. And when you were working for the employment department, you helped direct the lives of many people to create new opportunities and careers. You had a strong impact, but mostly, dear sister, you created a family for all who shared your home, even if only for a short time. Our memories of your generosity, your filled cupboards, and your open heart will continue to bring a smile and warmth to our hearts. I love you, Linda.
Nikki mentioned that Sandy's body failed her. On the other hand, one could say that their decision, family honoring her wish, to have her body donated to science to train others in healthcare, hasn't failed. That is a generous sacrifice and a sense of obligation to society, and how many unknown others will benefit because her body doesn't fail. Her body is providing for other people. I think we're at the last person, Ben. Am I correct? Okay.
This is my first time speaking to one of these, so wish me luck. My grandma was an amazing person. She was there for every part of my life, and the conversations that we would have together, I'll remember forever. We would all congregate at Grandma's house for Hanukkah and all the other holidays. Those were some of my favorite times of the year. There is nothing like having a tight-knit family that you can rely on and talk to whenever you need to. She was the epicenter of us and always will be. I would not be here nor be the person I am today without her. I love you. I hope you're smiling up there in heaven when you look down and see your family is thriving. I know you're dancing with Grandpa up there, and now you have all the time in the world to tell him about our lives and our adventures. Rest easy. I love you, and I'll miss you forever.
Ben, I appreciate the word epicenter. Now the question for all of you will be, who will step into that role to be the epicenter so that others can have experiences like yours? We come now to the prayer, El Malei Rachamim, God the compassionate one. Even in times of sadness, but remembered happiness, we turn to God for strength. I ask those who are comfortable to please stand as I recite this prayer on Sandy's behalf. El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamtsei Menuchan Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kadoshim Toharim, K'zohararki Mazirim, Et Nishmata Yeshara, Shalcha L'olama, Began Eden Tehei Menuchata, Ana, Ba'al Harachamim, Hasireha B'sezer Knapecha L'olamim, Utzror B'tzor Chaim Et Nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata. V'tanuach b'shalom amishkava v'nomar. Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Sandra, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in the tranquility of shalom, of peace. And let's all say, Amen. Lastly, we turn now, while we're still standing, to the so-called mourner's Kaddish. The reality is there's no word of mourning or sadness in this upcoming prayer. It speaks about life, and it's a prayer for us, the survivors of life, who understand life and appreciate life and give thanks to God for that appreciation. You're welcome to join with me if you would like. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, b'olma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye de kol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imaru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mavorach v'olam omei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei lekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran v'alma v'imaru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Kindly be seated. Any potential donations to be made in our memory are suggested by the family to go to Autism Speaks or a charity of your choice. I personally support Autism Speaks. I have a son who's on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, so I deeply appreciate support for all those in need. And I'm waiting for the staff to come in from the back or from the front, okay?